In this unit of our InDesign CS6 course, what we're going to do is we're going to identify and fix some of the problems that have been found with our new Total Training Commercial Color Printing Pre-Flight Profile. Now, as I look at that, we actually have 8 problems with color identified within the document, and we have one problem that's identified with images and objects that have been placed in our TT card flyer. Let's start with the color area first. I'm going to go to this triangle just to the left of color, and I'm going to click on it, pointing it down, and it'll show that we have 4 problems with color spaces that aren't allowed. Remember when we set that we would only allow CMYK color or grayscale color for any elements that are used in our InDesign document. And we'd said that we wouldn't allow registration color to be used inside our InDesign document. What's happened is that we do have instances of that inside this card flyer file that we're working with. And the pre-flight profile has alerted us to what those problems are going to be. Let's start with the color space not allowed option that we have right here. And we'll see that we have 4 of them. One of them is identified merely as a rectangle. And if I want to see what that is, all I have to do, as it says right here in the tooltip, is double click on it and it'll take me right to that. And what I'll see is that, sure enough, that reversed color area is actually built in Spot Color, a Pantone 288C spot color, and not defined in CMYK color separation terms. If I click on this little downward pointing triangle with info, what that'll do is that'll actually let us know what we're working with for the document. And in this case, what it says is that that rectangle itself is set as spot color. We can fix that very quickly. I'm going to go to the flyaway panel to the upper right of my color panel in the side dock, and I'm going to change that to define the fill not in spot color terms, but in CMYK terms. And when I do that, it'll break down that Pantone 288 coded spot color into cyan, magenta, yellow, and black color spaces, which is used those 4 separate inks to basically define the full spectrum of colors for 4-color commercial process color printing. Let's go to the next area where we have a problem, and that's the Total Training Online All Access Annual Subscription Includes. If I double click on that, it'll highlight that text, and it'll let me know that also is set for that spot color. I'm going to change that once again from spot color to CMYK. That fixes the problem. I'm going to do the same thing with this retail value of $200. I'm going to double click on that, and that's that small type that we set all the way down to the lower right of the front panel of our card flyer. Change that from spot color to CMYK, and that'll eliminate that problem as well. Now we only have one of them left. If I double click on this email header.jpg file, what it'll do is it'll tell us that that content uses RGB color. That will not separate correctly if we're working with the standard 4-color commercial printing. It'll print out perfectly on our color proofing printer, but it won't work correctly when we go for commercial printing at the end of the process. This could be a very expensive mistake. It's also a very easy one for us to fix. All I have to do is go to the Edit pull-down menu, and with that email header selected, I can go to Edit Original. And what that'll do is it'll open up that header graphic that we've got in Adobe Photoshop, and sure enough, it'll show us that that's set as RGB color for the separation. Now, if you don't have Photoshop installed, it may have opened a different application for you, like Preview or Windows Photo Viewer. If so, just sit back and watch for this lesson. If you do have Photoshop, but it didn't launch automatically for you, you may have to choose it manually by going to the Edit menu and choosing Edit With. I'm going to go to the Image pull-down menu, and I'm going to change that mode from RGB color into CMYK color. Now what it'll do is it'll let us know that we're using a standard US Web coded standardized web offset printing. That's what SWAP stands for, V2 profile. And that's a default color separation setting that's loaded into Photoshop. It works well for our purposes that we're doing today, so I'm going to say OK. And it will convert that to separate these colors or define them in CMYK terms. Now I'll see this little asterisk off to the right. That means that we've made changes and we have to save them. I'm going to do that by going to the File pull-down menu and selecting Save. Then I'm going to close that file. Let me hide Photoshop. And we'll go back to our InDesign document. And we'll see that that problem's been fixed. So everything where we had the wrong color space defined has been fixed. Let's go to the area where we said registration color is not allowed. And when I go to this, what it'll do is it'll show that we've got 4 lines defined in this document, and it says the page number is not 1 or 2, but A. So this means this is something that's defined on our master pages of the document. I'm going to double click on line number 1, and what it's going to do is it's going to identify a fold line that was built into the template. What this does is this lets us know that we should first fold this card in half, basically to hide the inside of it, and roll over the top of that first panel so that we can see it very clearly working with the document, and it can hide the second page, which would be inside. If I double click on line number 2, it shows another one of those fold marks. Line number 3 and line number 4, it shows all 4 of those are little indicators that are loaded in for our printer to say this is where the card should be folded. Now these are identified as problems, but in fact these are things that we do want to include in our InDesign card flyer, that TT card flyer that we built for the class. So while they're identified as alerts, that's exactly what we want to do. So we'll leave them be, and we can live with that showing these errors as long as that's something we know that we actually want in the final job. We're going to go to the last area, which is images and objects. And when I go there, it's going to bring me once again to image resolution and my email header.jpg file. I'm going to double click on that. And when I do, the information shown here says that the color images must be at least 200 ppi or pixels per inch, and that the effective resolution of what we've placed for a graphic actually shows at 188 pixels per inch. Now for standard commercial printing on a 133 or 150 line screen, you want at least 1 pixel's worth of definition for each line screen number that's set for that final print job. If we print this at 133 or 150 line screen, it may be alerted in our pre-flight profile that it's less than 200 pixels per inch, but we have an adequate amount of resolution for actually printing this job. So while this isn't a preferred number, you generally like a little extra headspace, this is perfectly acceptable for what we want to do, and we'll leave that as it is. We've done a good job, we fixed some problems, we've identified some other areas that are acceptable for our job. Let's save our handiwork by going Command S if you're working on a Mac, or if you're working on a Windows PC, we can use that keyboard shortcut Control S to save the file, and now we're prepared to package this job